He defended terrorists, cartel bosses, dictators, and he never blinked. But when Anthony Rico saw what was on those drives, he ran. No farewell speech, no CNN interview. Just one sentence, filed in a sealed federal courtroom and detonated like a legal grenade. Under no circumstances can I continue to effectively serve as counsel for Mr. Combs. That's it. That's all he wrote. But the message, it was nuclear. Because Rico doesn't run. He's not the guy who folds under pressure. He's the guy who is the pressure. He made a career defending the indefensible until now. This wasn't about fear. This was about self-preservation. And inside the Justice Department, they understood what the media didn't. He saw something, not gossip, not allegations, footage, files, facts. They tried to spin it, talking heads babbling about scheduling conflicts or legal strategy. But behind closed doors, the people who really know what time it is, they weren't guessing. They were asking the only question that mattered. What the hell did Rico see that made him drop Diddy like a live grenade? 10 years ago, Trump said it on national television, calm, precise, looking Sean Hannity straight in the eye. Bill Clinton is on the Epstein list. Hannity blinked. America laughed. The media rolled their eyes and went to commercial. But Trump didn't flinch, because he wasn't theorizing. He was reporting what they were too scared to say. And now the list isn't a punchline, it's an exhibit, because Rico saw what's on those hard drives, encrypted folders, labeled, organized, time-stamped, names, faces, tapes, not party videos, not gossip, production, blackmail, leverage. And now, game over. Inside a locked room at the DOJ, the air was dead quiet. Trump sat at the resolute desk. No teleprompter, no Twitter feed, just him and three others. Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, Pam Bondi, and a drive. Small, silver, labeled in permanent marker. Vault footage, final archive. Pam slid it across the table. Her tone was colder than the air conditioning. Everything's on it. 6 hours, high-res, names, faces, voices. Trump didn't touch it. He didn't have to. He already knew what was coming. This isn't about Diddy, he said. It never was. The media thought this was entertainment. An aging rapper on trial, some sealed lawsuits, another distraction. But Rico's exit wasn't theater. It was the opening shot. Because what he saw in that footage, it wasn't about parties. It was about infrastructure. A pipeline of exploitation built by billionaires, shielded by presidents, and sanitized by press silence. Trump looked at Patel. Calm, director. You ready to break it open? Kash nodded once. Start with the names. Dan Bongino crossed his arms, watching the drive like it might jump. They'll call it revenge, what he muttered. Trump didn't blink. Good, let him. Truth sounds like revenge when it's been buried long enough. Pam placed a second folder on the table. No logo, no seal, just one phrase. Executive action, eyes only. Trump opened it, signed it, without a word. Outside that room, the headlines hadn't caught up yet. The anchors were still smiling, the think pieces still dripping with sarcasm. They didn't know what Rico knew, but they would. Because when a man like Rico runs, not from bombs or bullets, but from evidence, you don't ask why. You ask who's next. 10 years earlier, the country wasn't ready. Not for the truth, not for him. In a quiet interview room, lit more for comfort than confrontation, Sean Hannity leaned forward, eyebrows furrowed, trying to keep pace with what had just been said. Trump didn't repeat himself. He didn't raise his voice. He just let it hang. Bill Clinton's on the Epstein list. No follow-up, no spin, just fact. Hannity blinked like he'd misheard. The camera stayed still, and in homes across America, viewers shrugged it off like another Trumpism. But Trump wasn't bluffing. He had already seen the outlines, the names, the planes with empty manifests, the sealed lawsuits, the girls no one wanted to talk about. He didn't say it for shock value. He said it because it was true, and truth has a habit of aging better than denial. Back in the present, the air inside the DOJ briefing room had shifted. Kash Patel tapped the drive gently, his mind already 5 steps ahead. "These aren't just trophies," he said, voice low. "They're blueprints." Pam Bondi opened a slim folder and turned it toward Trump. The header read, "Operation Vault Strike, Encrypted Data Overview." Pages filled with transcripts, cross-referenced aliases, payment trails. One page had 4 names circled. Highlighter yellow. No labels. Just initials. Trump didn't flinch. He'd known from the moment Rico quit. Diddy wasn't the center of this storm. He was the door, and now it was wide open. Dan Bongino stood in the back, arms crossed, silent until now. He stepped forward. "Rico didn't just see the tapes," he said. "He saw who was behind the camera, who was organizing, who was present, off record, off manifest." He looked directly at Trump. "And you were right. 10 years ago, when nobody listened." Trump didn't smile. He just reached into the side drawer of the table, pulled out a folded document, cream stock, gold seal. He laid it flat. Presidential Executive Order Number 926-Unseal Title. Declassification and public release of sealed investigative files relating to Jeffrey Epstein et al. Cash read it aloud. No one spoke. Then Trump uncapped a pen, thick, heavy. He signed it with a single stroke. 72 hours, he said. Then we floodlight the whole damn operation. Elsewhere, cable news chattered like parrots. Diddy's mugshot made the rounds. MSNBC dissected celebrity accountability. CNN ran a roundtable on due process and stardom. They still thought this was about one man. But underground, digitally, politically, institutionally, pressure was building. Every name buried in Epstein's ledgers. Every image hidden in Combs's security servers. Every flight without paperwork. It was all converging. And Trump? He wasn't chasing a headline. He was setting a trap. Pam slid another folder across the table. No printed name, just a handwritten tag. "For congressional submission." Trump nodded slowly. "They won't take this quietly," she warned. "The moment we go public, they'll call it political, personal, reckless." Trump's reply was calm. "They'll call it everything, except false." Dan cracked his knuckles. "Let them scream. Once the footage drops, it's not politics anymore. It's reality TV with federal warrants." Trump stood up, brushing off his jacket. "This isn't about taking down a rapper. It's about taking the blindfold off the country." He paused at the door, hand resting on the frame. "They buried the truth under black ink and billion-dollar NDAs." He turned. "Now we turn the light on." The congressional chamber was full before sunrise. Not because of a subpoena, because of a name. Actually, 3 names. Clinton, Obama, Combs. They weren't called to testify, not formally. They were invited as material witnesses in a classified oversight review. But everyone knew the truth. This wasn't a hearing. It was a reckoning disguised as a formality. The doors opened wide. Cameras swiveled. Reporters stood. Security cleared a path. Bill Clinton walked in first, shoulders square, smile tight, like a man still convinced charm could diffuse anything. Next was Barack Obama, calm, practiced, eyes scanning everything and nothing at once. And behind them, Sean Combs entered like it was a red carpet. Designer shades, custom suit. No emotion, not shame, not defiance, just detachment. The kind that says, "I've walked into worse rooms than this." Only this time, there were no exit doors. The room wasn't hostile, not yet. Some Democrats clapped lightly. Cable pundits spun it live. CNN, a hearing that could reshape the narrative on power and accountability. Fox, why are former presidents attending a session on Epstein? MSNBC, is this justice or political spectacle? Even C-SPAN had record viewership. And still no one understood what was coming. They thought it was about optics. They had no idea it was about evidence. Across the chamber, Trump's team was seated in silence. Kash Patel, crisp and still, Dan Bongino, leaning forward, hands locked, watching every step. Pam Bondi, expression unreadable, a small drive resting beneath her files. And at the back, not announced, not scheduled, Donald J. Trump. No podium, no notes, no tie, Just a look. The look of a man who didn't come to explain. He came to deliver. Chairman Mike Johnson gavelled in. We're here under full authority to examine sealed federal records and verify investigative integrity in connection with the Epstein and Combs matters. He looked directly at the three men seated across from him. You are not charged, but you are named. A long beat. Clinton leaned toward the mic, voice measured. Let's be clear. I'm not here because of guilt. I'm here because someone thinks turning this chamber into a stage will earn them votes. He didn't look back, but the gesture toward Trump was unmistakable. I have nothing to hide. I've served this country with dignity, and I'm not going to be smeared by conspiracy hobbyists and talk show partisans. Gasps, a few claps. MSNBC cut to a commercial. Fox stayed live. Obama followed. If this were about justice, I'd be the first to support it. But this isn't justice. It's performance art, dressed in procedure. He looked directly into the lens. Hope is not blind optimism, but neither is it revenge wrapped in subpoenas. For a second it worked. The crowd leaned in. The press scribbled quotes. It felt like they had control, like they'd seen this play before, but they hadn't. Not this version, not with tapes. Dan Bongino tapped his mic. No speeches today, no spin, just footage. A low murmur swept the chamber. He held up a black drive, labeled with the DOJ chain of custody seal. This isn't commentary. This isn't leaked. This was seized from a locked server inside Mr. Combs' residence. It's raw, time-stamped, verified by multiple forensic analysts. He paused. And no, it's not edited, not filtered, and not optional. The first video began. Grainy, quiet, but unmistakable. It was a wide shot, lavish, tropical, the kind of place power retreats to when no one's supposed to be watching. The time code read 2011. A voice was audible off camera, music in the background. Then a figure appeared, relaxed, drink in hand. Next to him, another man, recognizable even before the press gasped. Clinton, leaning close to someone small, female, young, too young. The audio was clearer than expected. She said she was 20, Clinton's voice said, then laughter. A second voice. She says a lot of things. Then nothing. The room sat frozen, not in disbelief, but in recognition. Everyone knew what they had just heard, but no one moved, no one spoke, because spin dies in silence. Bongino looked down at the console. Next clip. The screen faded to black, then lit again. Different room. Sleek, modern, high-end audio. Another voice. Phone's off. Barry wasn't supposed to be here. A figure moved through the frame. Tall, gray blazer. Partial profile. Then the voice. Clear. Calm. We're off record, right? This one doesn't end up with signatures. Gas echoed like thunder. Not from partisans. From professionals who knew that voice. From analysts who recognized that cadence. Obama's face didn't change. Not yet. But the mask cracked. Just slightly. Chairman Johnson broke the silence. We will recess for verification. No, Trump said from the back. He hadn't spoken all morning. But now? Every camera turned. His voice was low, controlled. You don't verify what's already been verified. He nodded at Cash. Just roll the rest. The chamber didn't erupt. It evaporated. The moment that second tape cut to black, the air inside the Capitol shifted from political theater to silent horror. You couldn't spin that voice. You couldn't misquote that timestamp, and you sure as hell couldn't bury it behind a think piece. Inside the press gallery, phones were down, but the panic wasn't digital. It was visceral. The kind that settles in when your job is to defend the status quo, and the status quo just bled on national television. Back at the Department of Justice, the War Room wasn't called that on paper. Officially, it was a secure coordination suite, but the people inside weren't coordinating. They were hunting. Kash Patel stood over the conference table, scanning a classified printout. Every file was tagged with metadata. Every tag matched names. Every name had a pattern. Epstein, Combs, multiple overlapping flight paths. One folder sat alone, marked in red. Code CROWNPIPE. He opened it. video logs, payment flows, an email thread that ended with archive to Vault 9, lock. No transfer. He turned to Pam Bondi, already deep into testimony cross-references. This wasn't just a network, Cash said. This was a system. Pam nodded, her voice dry. And that system was built to withstand discovery. Dan Bongino stood in the corner, whiteboard behind him covered in arrows, initials, and red flags. You ever seen anything like this? He asked, pointing to the diagram. Not even close, Cash replied. This isn't a celebrity scandal. This is organized logistics. Cameras weren't hidden. They were mounted. Files weren't erased. They were sorted by date. Pam leaned in, and someone paid to keep it that way. The door opened. Trump stepped in. No entourage, no press, just resolve. He walked straight to the table and laid down a fresh document. Interagency Directive 48, A title, Emergency Review of Sealed Evidence Pertaining to Epstein and Associates. He looked around the room. I want everything, every log, every camera angle, every bank trail that touched this operation. Dan crossed his arms. They're going to call this a witch hunt. Trump didn't flinch. Then we show them the broom. The DOJ analysts brought in a new hard drive, bigger, encrypted with a 256-bit seal. They plugged it in. First file, a drone shot over an island compound. Quiet, clean, too perfect. Then, blueprints, a floor plan labeled St. James, South Wing Recording Infrastructure. Camera placement, audio redundancies, power failsafes. This wasn't security, this was production. Cash read aloud, footage auto uploads to cloud mirror upon motion detection. He looked at Trump. There are backups. Trump nodded. Find them, because that's what comes next. Outside, the press had shifted tone. The sound bites were quieter now. NBC, if the footage is authentic, this could have lasting consequences. ABC, multiple former officials named in confidential manifests. The New York Times, no editorial yet, just a placeholder headline, developing DOJ confirms investigative review of Epstein files under executive order. They were stalling, trying to figure out how to walk back a decade of silence. But inside the room, Trump didn't stall. He stepped to the side wall, flipped open a secured locker, and pulled out a second binder. Title, Phase 2, Public Rollout. Pam raised an eyebrow. You sure you want to move this fast? Trump looked at her, steady. Fast? He placed a finger on the binder. This started before I ever ran for office. He tapped once. We're already late. Across the country, millions of viewers sat in stunned silence, replaying the congressional broadcast on loop. Not for political drama, but because deep down they understood. This wasn't about one man. This wasn't even about three. It was about the infrastructure of impunity, a machine built to protect the untouchable and profit off the disposable. And now someone was dismantling it, not with outrage, with receipts. Trump turned to Cash. We're not just prosecuting crimes, he said. We're exposing the architecture. He paused. Start drawing the map. The plan wasn't complicated. It was surgical. Drip, confirm, detonate. One clip at a time, one name, one voice, one unshakable truth. Not all at once. Because the public doesn't digest scandal in megabytes. They need moments. Inside the DOJ briefing hub, Dan Bongino ran point on distribution. No press releases, no hashtags, no leaks to friendly reporters, only controlled disclosures through subpoena-cleared pathways. The first one hit quietly, just a still image embedded in a memo to the House Oversight Committee, a cocktail glass, a blurred figure leaning over a girl. Time code 2013. Location, Epstein's private study. No names attached, but the public didn't need them. The internet did the rest. Within minutes, Twitter was on fire. X accounts aligned the decor with archival photos. Reddit matched the cufflinks to a former cabinet official. TikTok videos broke it down frame by frame. And while networks scrambled to verify, the DOJ didn't flinch, because that was just step one. Back in the war room, Trump stood before a floor-length monitor, footage playing in silence. looped on a 5-minute interval. He wasn't watching the people on screen. He was watching how the story moved. Kash Patel laid out the strategy. Every time we release a clip, we cross-check it with financials, donations, grants, endowments. See who got what. Right after these parties happened. Trump nodded. This isn't just corruption, he said. It's commerce. Pam Bondi flipped open a folder labeled Wave 2. Audio matches inside were transcriptions. Unreleased. One was just 12 seconds long. Male voice. This camera goes in the vent. Nobody notices. They never do. Second voice. Just keep Barry out of the wide shots. Dan raised an eyebrow. Barry? Kash didn't blink. We've confirmed 3 different recordings with that name attached. 2 in Combs's penthouse, 1 in the island suite. Pam set the file down. They built a studio. Outside the room, media response was shifting. No more satire, no more snark. Now it was denial. CNN. Anonymous leaks not yet authenticated. The Atlantic. The danger of editing software in political warfare? MSNBC. Is this the digital age's Salem witch trial? But for every headline, another file dropped. A voice, a wire transfer. A handwritten note recovered from a locked drawer in Diddy's Miami compound. Room 4, Clinton guest. Filmed discreetly. Then came the soundbite that detonated the timeline. 6 words. I told you Barry can't appear. It wasn't the words that cracked the floor. It was the voice. Clean. Presidential. Familiar to every American who'd voted in 2008. Twitter imploded. Newsrooms went silent. And in a quiet moment no one noticed. The White House press secretary canceled all briefings for the week. Kash turned to Trump. That clip alone breaks the firewall. Trump didn't smile. He turned to a stack of sealed envelopes, each one marked with a date and a target. D-1, Clinton video number 2. D-2, Island Ledger transfer log. D-3, private jet footage, unlabeled manifest. He tapped the top envelope. Let them call it revenge, he said. They laughed when I said the names. They rolled their eyes when I said the list would come back. But now they're Googling the timestamps. Dan leaned forward. And when they say it's fake, Kash replied calmly, we press play. The drip became a flood. And for the first time in years, the American public wasn't divided by red and blue. They were staring at raw footage, chain of custody records, undeniable audio, and asking the same question, why now? And the answer? Because now we have the proof. They said it was political. They said it was edited. They said it was fiction wrapped in MAGA packaging. But when the third video played, nobody said anything. Because the room wasn't built to absorb silence that heavy. The Capitol hearing chamber had seen its share of grandstanding. This wasn't that. This was survival mode in slow motion. Pam Bondi stood at the center of the committee desk. No podium, no preamble, just a black drive marked Chain Verified V3. She inserted it into the console. No commentary, she said. No narration. Just video. The screen lit up. Date, August 4th, 2012. Location, Epstein Estate, South Lounge footage angle, ceiling cam. First, a man enters. Second, a voice off camera. Phones in the box, you know the drill. Third, a girl, barely 16, guided toward a velvet sofa. Then, the voice. Unmistakable, measured, presidential. I don't want names, I want silence. Every word matched, every syllable time-stamped. The voice print had already cleared DOJ authentication. Dan Bongino didn't even look up. He let the sound bury the room. Obama shifted in his seat. His posture didn't change, but the stillness around him did. The kind of stillness that doesn't ask questions. It waits for a defense. But none came. Not yet. Bill Clinton leaned toward his attorney, whispering something frantic. Trump noticed. He didn't move. He didn't need to. Because the screen changed again. Date, July 29th, 2013. Location, private jet, Gulfstream interior camera. Tail section, Bill Clinton seated near the back, legs crossed, reading something. Across from him, Diddy holding a drink. Behind them, laughter, music, a scream. Not playful, not faint. Then the audio. Clinton. She said no. Handle it. Diddy. She'll change her mind. The screen paused. The room did too, because everyone knew. That wasn't a denial. That was a document. Kash Patel leaned forward, voice quiet but surgical. We're not here to guess. We're here to confirm. He tapped a folder. Flight logs show this plane departed from Nassau to Little St. James. Passenger manifest includes William Jefferson Clinton, Sean Combs, and 2 unnamed females under age 18. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to, because for the first time since the hearings began, Clinton didn't deny it. He didn't speak. He didn't blink. He just looked at the desk. Across the room, Obama leaned forward. I don't accept the premise, he said calmly. These videos can be forged, voices replicated. This is a dangerous precedent. Trump stood up, slowly, deliberately. This isn't AI, he said. This isn't hearsay. This is 6 terabytes of footage from Diddy's private server, with date-locked metadata, satellite cross-confirmation, and verified financial records matching every timestamp. He stepped forward. You had your say. Now the country gets its proof. Pam slid another file across the table. Inside, signed statements from 3 women, each identifying themselves in the videos, each confirming they were underage, each confirming they were compensated, each confirming the names they remembered most. Barry, Bill, Puff. The room didn't gasp. It folded. Dan Bongino pulled the mic close. You think this is political? He held up a screenshot. Then explain the money. Bank transfers, private foundations, NGOs linked to donor accounts from the Clinton Foundation and post-presidency speaking fees, all flowing through holding companies tied to event hosts on the island. Dan didn't yell. He simply stated the obvious. This wasn't about sex, it was about leverage. Outside the chamber, the headlines cracked. The Washington Post, Epstein network larger than reported. Politico, DOJ confirms chain of custody on footage. New York Post, Clinton, Obama, Diddy, the room, the tape, the silence. No more satire, no more delay. The public had seen the faces, heard the voices, watched the denials collapse in real time. Trump returned to his seat, didn't smile, didn't gloat. He just leaned over to Kash and said, now we see who breaks first. No more hearings, no more commentary, no more alleged. The tapes had spoken. Now it was time to act. Inside a secure operations room beneath the Department of Justice, the walls weren't lined with flags or framed diplomas. They were lined with screens, each one flickering with names, dates, archived footage, subpoenas being drafted in real time. Trump stood at the head of the room, not as a politician, as a commander. Across from him, Kash Patel, eyes locked on a rotating set of federal indictments. Dan Bongino, pacing like a guard dog who just caught scent of the target. Pam Bondi, flipping through affidavits already signed and sealed. The table in front of them was stacked with folders marked, witness confirmed, chain verified, indictment ready. Trump didn't sit, didn't blink. He pointed to the top folder. What's our window? Pam answered without looking up. We go now. We control the narrative. We wait. They'll try to spin. Dan stepped in. They're already moving pieces. Lawyers, press, intel back channels. Trump turned to Kash. You said this wasn't about politics. Still believe that? Kash nodded. It's about patterns and accountability. Trump tapped the folder once. Then it's time. He opened a sealed envelope stamped with the DOJ emblem. Inside, a formal executive directive invoking emergency prosecutorial coordination under Article 2 authority. Title, National Enforcement Priority Exploitation Networks Involving Public Officials. Dan looked at the heading. That's going to make some people scream. Trump shrugged. Let them. They've had decades to whisper. The first names on the list weren't a surprise. Sean Combs, William Jefferson Clinton, an unnamed individual identified only as BHO, pending final confirmation of voice print analysis. Next to each name, an action designation. Combs, arrest warrant, immediate. Clinton, investigative subpoena plus seizure order. BHO, deferred pending voice print. Finalization plus chain confirmation. Kash tapped the third file. We're 2 steps away from sealing that one. Trump's reply was cold. Then take 1 step now and drag the last one across the finish line. Pam stood. I'll coordinate the judiciary. Northern District has already pre-approved sealed warrants. Dan leaned over the table. Want me to prep media control? Trump looked at him squarely. We don't control anything. We release everything. A pause. No spin, no interpretation, just footage, names, signatures. Dan nodded. Then we give them the files. Uncut. Outside, the nation braced for headlines. What they got instead? A government press bulletin with 3 sentences. The Department of Justice is now in possession of verified evidence implicating current and former public officials in coordinated criminal misconduct. Action is being taken under federal authority. Additional materials to be released pending chain of custody review. The bulletin had no press conference, no podium. It didn't need one. Because 3 hours later, federal agents surrounded Diddy's property. Because 6 hours later, Clinton's personal archive at his foundation's office in Harlem was sealed for evidentiary protection. Because 8 hours later, Twitter exploded with unconfirmed reports that a voice analyst from Quantico had matched the final clip to 98.7% certainty, with only one match in public federal biometric archives. Inside the DOJ, Pam Bondi placed a sealed drive into a burn-safe container. This is the last piece. Trump nodded once. Then get ready. She paused. For what? Trump turned, eyes cold but clear. For the moment they stop denying and start begging. The knock wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. By the time the tactical team reached the front gate of Diddy's Miami estate, the news had already broken. Federal action confirmed, multiple properties sealed. Headlines raced ahead of handcuffs. But behind the scenes, no one was smiling. Because this wasn't about optics. It was about neutralizing a network. Pam Bondi sat beside a federal clerk, watching the live stream of the arrest unfold, not on social media, but through a secure government feed. Time-stamped, chain-verified, no commentary, just action. Sean Combs was taken into custody at 8:46 a.m. Eastern. No resistance, no statement. Just one glance, upward, brief, like a man checking to see whether the sky was falling or just his empire. At the same hour, across the East River in New York, a second order came through. Asset seizure. Not cash, not cars, data. Boxes of hard drives, cold storage units labeled with dates and aliases, a private film archive locked behind biometric scans. It took 2 minutes to override. And when the drives were pulled, agents didn't cheer. They triple-sealed them, marked evidence, level 1 priority. No one in that room needed to ask what level 1 meant. Meanwhile, the White House didn't issue a statement. They didn't have to. The silence was louder than any speech. Instead, the country watched as something they hadn't seen in years unfolded, power being arrested. CNN broke in at 9:17 a.m. Breaking, federal agents have entered multiple properties tied to the Epstein-Combs network. The anchor tried to remain neutral. Failed. MSNBC shifted tone within an hour, changing from potential overreach to potential precedent. Fox simply ran a banner. The shield holds, DOJ moves in. Across platforms, something rare happened. People stopped arguing and started watching. Inside DOJ headquarters, Trump stood by the wall monitor, arms crossed. He said nothing. Not until Kash Patel handed him a 1-page printout. Voice print confirmed. 3 independent labs. Match probability, 99.3%. Subject code, BHO. Trump scanned the page, slowly, then passed it to Pam without a word. She didn't blink. The press will scream retaliation, she said. Trump looked at her, calm. They've screamed louder for less. Dan Bongino checked his phone. Clinton's legal team just filed a motion to suppress video evidence. Claiming executive privilege retroactive to 2001, Kash smirked. Good luck with that. Pam pulled a fresh document from her folder. Let him file. We'll counterfile with a list of sealed settlements tied to his foundation. Some of those NDAs were signed less than 3 years ago. Dan raised an eyebrow. He was still settling? Kash answered, flipping a tab in the binder. And still flying. Outside, protests started forming. Not mass outrage, just noise, pre-printed signs, predictable slogans. But they couldn't drown out the footage, or the affidavits, or the financial trails, because this wasn't a scandal anymore. It was a record, and the record didn't blink. Trump stepped out of the operations room into the press hallway. Cameras surged, microphones shot up, 1,000 questions fired at once. He raised a hand, not to wave, to stop them. One sentence only. "We didn't come for a headline. We came for the truth." Then he walked off, leaving the cameras spinning with nothing to add, because there was nothing more to say. The lights dimmed, not for drama, for proof. Inside the Capitol chamber, the final session resumed under special rule. Closed phones, no interruptions, no exits. The walls didn't shake. The truth didn't need sound effects. At the center of the room, a screen. No graphics, just a raw video player. A voiceover from the DOJ clerk read one line. "This footage has been validated by 6 independent forensic teams. It has not been altered. It is being presented under subpoena authority." Then play. It was a quiet clip. No music, no cuts. Just a room. Concrete floors, dull lighting. A man seated in the corner, partially turned away. He spoke with control, like someone used to being recorded, but not used to being caught. "No signatures, no timestamps. That's how this works." Another voice replied, female, quiet, shaking. "I didn't agree to be filmed." The man didn't respond. He just reached for a drink and smiled. The screen paused. A single line of text appeared. "Recorded, March 19th, 2014. Confirmed. Gulfstream G550, tail number. Redacted." The file closed. No commentary, no accusations. Just a room full of lawmakers, journalists, and former presidents, and the absence of denial. Because for once, no one stood up to spin. No one raised a point of order. Even the usual defenders stayed silent. Because when the tape rolls clean, you sit, you swallow, and you wait. Trump didn't speak. He didn't move. He watched them. Obama, arms crossed, face blank, thinking. Clinton, fingers twitching on the desk, calculating. Diddy was already gone. Pam Bondi addressed the panel. In accordance with chain of custody procedure, the full unredacted file set will be transferred to federal custody within 24 hours. No further hearings are scheduled. The record stands. She stepped away. Dan Bongino spoke next, not as an enforcer, as a witness. This isn't a partisan victory. It's not a takedown. It's a reckoning of silence, of the institutions that looked away. He turned toward the cameras. And now the American people are looking back. Trump stood slowly. He didn't face the press. He faced the seal behind the witness bench. He raised a hand, not in gesture, in reminder. The law was never supposed to serve the powerful. It was supposed to protect the powerless. He paused. And for too long, we forgot that difference. He nodded once to Kash Patel. It's time we remember. The chamber didn't erupt, it breathed. Because when a system collapses, it doesn't shatter with sound. It folds in silence. As the lights came back on and staffers packed up notes and cameras wound down, no one claimed victory. Because victory wasn't the goal. Clarity was, and it had finally arrived. Not in the form of a headline, but in the footage that no one could unsee, and the names no longer sealed.